felt, to me, comparing to other movies that we watched from that time, like very new and like completely, different from what we've seen.
What's up, everybody? I'm Rick.
And I'm Anna.
And welcome to a review of the 1933 movie Little Women. Now, for those of you who don't know, this channel is a bucket list channel in which me and Anna try to realize the goals and dreams that are on our bucket list. One of those goals is to watch every movie that was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Award from 1927 to 2028.
It's 101 years.
Yes, it is. Right now we are at the sixth year of the Academy Award, which is 1932/1933. And we've watched 43 movies. There is one movie that we couldn't watch, The Patriot, which is a lost movie. And so we've completed 6 years. This is the 7th we're doing. It's getting confusing.
Yeah.
We also did 2019 is what I want to say. So yeah, we're progressing little by little. Anna, the way we're going to do this review, it's the same way we always do them. First part is going to be spoiler-free for you out there who want to hear our thoughts but don't want to get spoiled. Second part is going to be spoiler-filled, so we're going to focus on certain elements of the plot and of the movie that we want to explore more in depth with spoilers. But don't worry, we will warn you before we get to the spoilers section. And at the very end, Anna, there is
a ranking.
Yes, the ranking.
Yay.
So for all the movies of the 6th Academy Award, we've been ranking them in order, like from our favorite to least favorite. And so at the end, we're going to add Little Women to that ranking.
And this is going to be fun because it's actually the last nominee of the year that we're putting on that list.
There's another nominee.
The last movie is the winner.
Yeah, but to be the winner, you also have to be a nominee.
Well, yeah, obviously. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's always more interesting to see where the winner stands compared to the other ones.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, you're right. After this, there's one movie left for that year. If you want to get to the ranking but don't want to get through the spoilers, there will be a timestamp in the description below. So Anna, before all of this though, let's get to some info about this movie.
Info about the movie, yes.
Yeah. Now, some of this info you might already know because, like I said, we did 2019, so we've watched a certain movie called Little Women, which was nominated in 2019. So some of this you might remember from the 2019 edition, but still, it might be a refresher too. This is a RKO Radio Picture movie that came out on November 16, 1933. It is based off the 1986/1989 two-volume novel of the same name written by Louisa May Alcott. This is the third out of 7 film adaptation of the book. So this one follows 2 silent versions, one in 1917, one in 1918. After that came the 1933 version that we've just watched. Then there was a 1949 version, a 1994 film, a 2018 film, and a 2019 film.
I'm surprised that of all of them, before the 2019 movie, I never heard of this title before.
Yeah, me neither.
Like, I was surprised, and now we find out that it was actually already on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting when you look at the rate at which they were making these. They made one in 1917 and then straight away in 1918, and then some break between the other versions, and then one in 2018, and then right away in 2019. But the 2018 and 2019 version were made for the 150th anniversary of the book.
Okay, I see.
So, like, there is some kind of logic here. This movie, the 1933 version, the one which we're talking about more specifically today, was directed by George Cukor, who's also the director of 1 Hour with You.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very different movie.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Little Women stars Katharine Hepburn as Josephine March, Joe Bennett as Amy March, who was also Anne Disraeli as Lady Clarissa, Frances D as Margaret Marge or Meg, Jane Parker as Beth Marge or Elizabeth, who was Louise and Lady for a Day.
Okay, right.
Spring Byeongton as Marmee March, Douglas Montgomery as Theodore/Laurie Lawrence, Paul Lucas as the Professor Baher, Edna May Oliver as Aunt Marge, who also plays Anne. Let's see if you remember that one.
Oh, no, I wouldn't.
Oh, no?
I don't remember. I didn't recognize her.
Tracy Wyatt and Cimarron. You remember and Cimarron?
I remember the movie.
The wife had a friend that lady who was always like commenting about
Okay.
everyone else gossiping.
I remember, yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have recognized her. I wouldn't have remembered.
And Henry Stephenson as Mr. Lawrence. So big cast. Some more information. The costume designer Walter Plunkett had to redesign several of Joan Bennett's costume to conceal the fact that she was in an advanced pregnancy, a condition that Bennett intentionally did not mention to Cukor when he cast her for the film.
Wow, okay.
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Ingenious.
Yeah. Hey, she got the role. The film opened, so we're talking about the reception of the movie now. The film opened on November 16, 1933, and despite being one of the coldest day in 50 years, it broke opening day records.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was the fourth most popular movie at the US box office in 1933. The movie was heavily praised by critics upon its release and was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, but won 1. So, of course, was nominated for Best Picture, for Best Director, George Cukor, did not win, and for Best Adaptation, Victor Herman and Sarah Y. Mason, based on the novel by Louisa May Alcott, of course, and that's the one it won.
Okay, Best Adaptation.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the 2019 movie was also nominated for that.
Yeah.
But it didn't win.
No, I have some problem with the 2019 results.
I was thinking so too. I really thought it should have won.
Yeah, just the fact that Greta Gerwig was not even nominated for Best Director. I'm not even gonna start there. So the movie got a sequel with different actors released the following year called Little Men, based on Louisa May Alcott's 1871 novel Little Men. So Anna, that's it for our information for now. Now let's talk about the movie. Without spoiling anything, can you tell me, did you enjoy this movie?
Yes, I did. I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it so much. I love the performances. I like the story. I already knew the story, but I still enjoyed watching it. I loved seeing how they put together the scenes. Like, I was following that specifically when I was watching the movies. Like, how do they piece together, jumping from, like, one moment in time to another in their storyline? I was specifically looking for that, and I liked it.
I also enjoyed it, though I'm faced with an issue that I knew would arise when we saw that this movie would happen, which is that I've seen the 2019 version before this, and this is of no fault of this movie, which came out way before, and by all means I should have seen this one way before, but I couldn't stop myself from comparing at nearly every moment this movie and the 2019 one, which I loved. It was very difficult for me to judge it like appropriately, like watching it and not thinking most of the time, and the 2019 they did it like this, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I thought about that too, but I only tried to keep in mind one thing. I realized it pretty early on when we started watching the 1933 version, that the 2019 version of the movie is modern. It feels modern. Everything from the characters, the way the action is put together, the way the movie is put together, like everything about this movie is like, it's refreshing, you know? It's a story from 1870 something, but it feels like so fresh and modern. And looking at the 1933 version of the movie, I thought, you know what? For 1933, this probably felt fresh and modern for them. Frankly, I thought about that. Maybe not the whole movie, but certain elements of it felt, to me, comparing to other movies that we watched from that time, like very new and like completely, you know, different from what we've seen. From what we've seen before. Yeah,
I have not read the novel upon which both of these are based on, and so that might be an interesting exercise to do. Because I feel like if there's one thing, this movie, or at least it felt like, followed the source material pretty well. Because of so many of the similarities with the 2019 version, I just assumed that both of them, this is based off of a book. Both of them followed the novel pretty to the point. You know, a lot of movies, sometimes they make changes that are not necessary changes.
Yeah.
And here, I was glad to see that like the story stays pretty much the same. I was scared that like they would modify the story that I came to know through the recent movie, and then I'd be like, oh no, this is not even the same story. But it was the same story, and it was as enjoyable. Of course, I'm just saying that like the actors, the performances, the visual of the movie, I could like let it go because it's in black and white. It's filmed back then.
But even that, it felt similar.
Yeah,
the way
it did.
their living situation was portrayed, the environment, the surroundings. It felt similar.
Yeah, it did. But all these other elements, the portrayal of the characters, and we're gonna talk about like specifically one character, Amy, when we get into spoilers, which I thought like in the 2019 version were so well done, and here like that was missing. But again, this is not the fault of this movie, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Greta Gerwig was inspired by this movie in a lot of ways, because a lot of the scenes mirror each other so well that you have to think she watched that. And regardless of all of this is my personal gripes, but I enjoyed the movie. So, and I really want to get to the story and some of the characters, and I don't feel like I can talk about it without spoiling a lot of the stuff. So let's give our final thoughts. Like, would you recommend this movie?
Yes, I would recommend it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great movie. I have to mention in this part, before we get to the spoilers, Katharine Hepburn's performance to me was great. I liked it so much. It's very different from the 2019 movie. So if you've watched the 2019 movie, you have to expect that. You have to expect that it's not the same thing. But don't, try not to compare. I tried my best not to compare while watching it. It's hard, but I tried to compare it more to other movies of the time.
Yeah.
And I saw its value much better in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which really you did it much better than me, and I tried. I went into it thinking I shouldn't compare. It was impossible. I compared the whole time. I'm comparing it right now. And so yeah, it was a bit more difficult for me, but that doesn't take anything away from the movie. That's a thing though, that even though I was comparing, and I'm still comparing, I can still make the difference between my own gripes and my own judgment based on future elements that movie couldn't have known about, and the historical value or the fact that this movie came before. I can make the difference. And of course, just because they did some things in 2019 that they didn't do in 1933, I can't blame the 1933 movie for that. That doesn't make sense. And so yeah, that was a great movie. I recommend it. Go watch it. But now, Anna,
yes,
let's get to a spoiler section. First of all, let's get our summary of this movie. Quick summary, just one sentence. This movie chronicles the life of a group of sisters growing up in the 19th century's America. That's it.
Okay.
The one other element that I had here in terms of trivia that is a bit spoiler-based, but not really, I just put it there just in case some people didn't want to know anything about the movie, is that, so I talked about the costume design earlier. So Plunkett, who's the costume designer, designed all of the costume very thoughtfully, purposely shuffling clothing items between the March sisters to showcase that they had a strong bond in which they shared clothing items, but also their living arrangement, because they're not the most fortunate in terms of money. But it was mainly for the family bond and the idea of sharing.
That's interesting. I didn't actually notice it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not necessarily something that you notice, but it creates a certain feel to the movie.
Mm-hmm. And I pulled that trivia element specifically because I remember when we talked about the 2019 one, there was also a lot of trivias about the costume design. And I think it's so interesting to use costume design as a form of storytelling in both cases here. And the other one also had to do a lot with colors, but here, of course, you can't do that. But each of the sisters had a color scheme, that was subtle. You didn't watch the movie and thought this sister is orange. No, it wasn't as obvious as that.
Right.
But once you knew about it and you thought about it, you're like, yeah.
You see it afterwards. Mm-hmm. Right.
And so that's the same thing here. I'm sure if you rewatch the movie knowing that they shuffle some of their clothing.
Yeah, you'll look for it and you see it.
You'll notice it. Storytelling through other means than just dialogue and the script per se is always interesting for me. So I talked about all the comparison that I've been making in my head while I was watching these two movies. To me, the biggest one is Amy's character.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I feel like Amy's character was really not as present in the story. It didn't have the same weight as it did in the
2019 version.
Yeah.
Of course, here we're kind of spoiling a little bit the 2019 movie too. But if you've seen either of them, it's the same story.
Yeah, it's the same story. Like
So,
it's exactly the same story. Nothing changes in terms of events.
Yeah, so it's character portrayal that is different, and it's the way the movie is cut also, which we're gonna talk about in a few minutes. But I want to stay on Amy first. Amy, which, like you said, this is a 2019 movie. Modern elements are thrown into it. A lot of more modern take on the woman's condition and stuff like that is in the 2019 movie that you don't really feel here. You know, this is before the big revolutionary movements of the 60s, 70s, so you don't expect all of that per se, but it was still something that I enjoyed in the newer version. That was
I felt like, especially if you think of the 2019 version of Amy, she had a strong like impact on the storyline. Whereas in the 1933 version, we barely follow her.
Yeah.
Like we don't see her for actually a lot of the story. Like the whole adult part, she only appears at the end.
Because they don't show her in Paris. They only show her that one time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't get any of her like character growth, development, story, which happened a lot in that time from what we saw in the 2019 movie. So yeah, I feel like that really took away a lot from her character.
There's one more thing that I want to talk about in terms of 1933 versus 2019, and I promise this is the last time we're going to be comparing. After that, we'll talk just about this movie by itself, is the way the story is told. Because in the 2019 version, they parallel a lot of the elements when they're young and when they're adults. Like throughout the movie, both happen at the same time. And here it's more linear.
Right, and I was really surprised actually to see that we only follow Jo during her time in New York for like 5 minutes in the movie.
Yeah.
Like she basically goes there and then she comes back. Like it's like a time lapse and then she has to go back. Like barely anything happens.
Well, it's such a big part of...
of the modern version. Or the last version, the latest version.
But also like not having the adult part being so prevalent at the beginning also makes the adult part all about Jo, which wasn't the case in the newer version of the movie, where you see a bit of Meg, you see a bit of Beth and Amy while they're adults too.
Right.
Much more than in this case.
Yeah, it does feel like this movie altogether, like the 1933 version of the movie, focused more on Jo. Like it was her story, which I think it is. It is in both cases. Her story, but it felt like in the 2019 version, you had a balance.
Yeah.
You know, in like how much screen time each one of the sisters gets.
So yeah. Notwithstanding, let's leave 2019 for
but
2019.
And like to conclude it, actually, that is what I was saying, what I meant when I was saying that the 2019 version, it feels modern. You know, it is a modern take on like the same story.
Old story, yeah.
Right. Which you can't expect that kind of a vision to even exist in 1933.
No, of course. But they're the same story, so of course comparison is inevitable. But let's leave that inevitability now and talk about just 1933. What this movie did well, which it does a lot of things well, out of his own merit.
I agree.
And I even said, I'm sure a lot of what Greta Gerwig did was inspired by this movie in some ways. What I really want to focus on right now is characterization of them, like especially when they're young. I thought was very well made. Like you understood very quickly who every character was and what like their personality was about. Like the movie quickly tells you like, oh, Amy, she's that type of girl, she's the selfish one, Joey's the tomboyish one, you know, you get it right away very quickly. You know, Lawrence is like this, and so within even like minutes of their introduction, and then you can follow the rest of the movie pretty easily. I love that.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was really well done too.
And that extends to everybody else. You know, the first time you see their mom, you get right away what she's about. Yeah. What did you think in terms of, you talk about the second part where Joe is in New York is more so about Joe specifically. Did you think that it meshes well with the rest of the movie, or it seems like, oh, now we're switching to something that seems totally different?
You know what? I didn't feel that kind of like a break in the story, but I wish I would have. Because it feels like that's the turning point. Like that's the moment when everything changes. Like the moment when Joe leaves to New York and Amy leaves to Paris. That should be like the turning point in the story. And it didn't really feel that much like that,
Yeah, it felt like an
interlude.
A
continuity. Yeah, it was a continuity, like a perfect continuity, She just goes there and then she comes back and like, I wish it was a little bit more impactful. And I don't know exactly what that entitles, like what would have made it more impactful, because I don't know, I'm not a movie director. But I did miss that feeling, of like, okay, this is the moment when everything changes,
You remember when we talked about this movie the first time, the whole thing about the professor, when Alcott wrote the book, like, and a lot of people after the first volume wanted to know, like, who is
Joe marry?
going to marry, and she doesn't want to marry Laurie. She makes it clear, but in the end married this professor because the author was like, you want her to marry someone? Fine, she's gonna marry just this random guy. And here I felt it even more.
Yeah,
like,
it worked better.
Like, this guy is random, and he's not the type that you would imagine.
Not at all. Not at all.
He's much older.
Yeah, he's much older. He's much like clumsier in the way he interacts with her.
Yeah.
You do feel that.
It's an interesting point. And so, like I said at the beginning, I feel this movie, I haven't read the book, but I imagine respects the source material very well in a lot of ways. I appreciate that. Is there any other elements that you want to focus on?
I wanted to talk a little bit about the ending of the movie, though. Because for all of its good parts, and maybe we should have actually talked a little bit more about the good parts of the movie, but I want to pick at that one part of it that didn't feel that right to me, which is the ending. For some reason, I just felt like that ending was just not as strong as the rest of the movie.
And when you say the ending, what part exactly? Like
the very end when Beth dies.
Oh, okay.
It was good, but I don't know. I felt like the whole movie was like so strong. A lot of scenes like really well delivered, really well made. And then like at the end, I felt like it was missing something.
Yeah. I think I also felt like there was less of a punch, like, oh, this hits you hard. She just died. But I think it's because a lot of the characters accepted it. Like, even before it happened, not only Beth accepts it, but Joe too. Like, they see it and like it's unquestionable. She's going to die, and they have made their peace with that. And so before she even dies, you as a viewer also makes your peace with the fact that like she's gone.
Yeah, probably that's what it is.
And so like when she does die, you're not like hit as hard. But I do agree, it could have been more of a, because it kind of leads to that her character arc.
Right.
Anna, so yeah, let's just reiterate one last time. Do you recommend this movie?
Yes, I recommend it. I think it was a really well done movie. I will say it again. Katharine Hepburn's performance, man, I can't wait to see her in other movies too. Because I had heard of her before we watched this movie, and I thought she was amazing.
I also recommend it. I know I've been talking a lot about the things that I was missing from it, but that doesn't mean that I didn't like it. I enjoyed every minute of it, and it's the story too.
I feel like the things that we said were missing is more like, okay, there's like a small issue here and a small issue there, but like the rest of the movie is great.
These are details that you nitpick, and that's what happens when a movie is great. You find stuff to nitpick about because that's,
and it's much easier to point them out
that you can criticize.
Yeah,
but really, like, this is a great movie, and it's a great story because the book story in itself is great to begin with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it was greatly portrayed here. Like I said, the imagery is fantastic. The performances you've mentioned several times are fantastic too. So let's get to our ranking. It's gonna be a difficult one. our current ranking at number 8, The Private Life of Henry VIII. Number 7, A Farewell to Arms. Number 6, State Fair. Number 5, Smiling Through. Number 4, Lady for a Day. Number 3, 42nd Street. Number 2, She Done Him Wrong. Number 1, I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. This is a very difficult one.
Yeah, it is.
So Anna, where would you put this movie?
So I have to say first. Oh man. And I've been thinking about this really since we watched the movie. I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, I would say I would put it at number 1.
At number 1? Oh yeah.
I mean,
We've been agreeing up until now, but I'm not gonna agree with you here.
Okay, so I was hesitating between 1 and 2, but in the end, I think it feels like it would be number 1 for me. But what do you think?
I would put it at number 3.
3? You think She Done Him Wrong is better than Little Women?
Yeah, and maybe, it loses from the new element. I already knew Little Women, the whole story, and so maybe there's not that surprise element that She Done Him Wrong brought with its surprising story. Like I don't know. I would put it at number 3. I'd put it above 42nd Street, below She Done Him Wrong.
Okay.
I would, and I'm willing to listen to an argument about it being number 2. I am not leaving this chair if it's number 1.
No? Oh, come on. Okay. Here's the argument that I'm gonna bring. And I don't know, it's like an idea that I have, so I hope that I'm gonna be able to formulate it clearly enough here. I feel like this story, if you think about it, it's an what is it, 1870, when was the book written?
1868.
1868 story about like women breaking free of those like patriarchal society rules, But then it's made in 1933 when those issues were still there. I feel like for a movie to deliver that message so well in a time when they to deliver that issue that was present there in the past, right? Like some 50 years before, to adapt it to their time, to make the people understand that sure, this is an old story, but it still applies to our time. It still applies to our society. And I feel like it did that. I saw it the most in Joe's character.
But wouldn't you say that Mae West's character Lou and She Done Him Wrong is a strong representation of a woman who breaks free from the patriarchal rules of society?
But I would say that Mae West's character, she's more like the kind of strong, independent woman who's like, I don't care, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Whereas in Little Women, they're dealing with that issue of like, we want to do what we want for ourselves, but at the same time we don't want to be just like outside of the society rules, we want people to understand that that's not the right thing to do, that it's not right to tell me what to do because I'm a woman, but at the same time that doesn't make me like the bad person here, or like someone who lives outside of the society rules,
But this is mainly for Joe's character. The other characters don't really follow that, and the 2019 version they all do, but in this one it's mainly Joe who's the one pushing against the rules.
Yes, that is true. I would say that is true. I still felt like their story portrays these issues better than
She Done Him
Wrong.
Because
think about it, it's much easier to portray a strong, independent woman when you make her, kind of like just not care. Whereas here, like, they care.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to be allowed to have it their way. Or, like you said, it's actually mostly Joe.
Yeah.
But it's more difficult to portray that.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess we're just gonna cut it in the middle anyway, because I'm not sure I would still put it at number 2, but since you wanted it at number 1, I wanted it at number 3. If we cut, it's still number 2. That's where it's gonna end up. New ranking. Are you satisfied with that? Or do you want to push for number 1?
No, I'll accept it because I was hesitating between the two anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, the reason, I'm gonna say it since we're here, the reason why I wanted to put it at number one is just because in the end, I actually personally just enjoyed the story more. This one, the Little Women, than
I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang.
Right. But I can't really think of enough arguments to say that it's a better done movie, you know? I think they're both great. And like they're both kind of equal to me in my head, but I just enjoyed the story of Little Women more.
Oh, and I wake up at night thinking about that last line from I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang.
Oh yeah.
How do you survive? I steal. Yeah. This encompasses the whole movie. It's genius.
Yeah, you're right. That was good. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, you know, I can't really come up with like technical arguments of why this should be number one other than I liked it more. But yeah, so I'm good with number two. Okay,
so our new ranking at number 9, The Private Life of Henry VIII. Number 8, Farewell to Arms. Number 7, State Fair. Number 6, Smiling True. Number 5, Lady for a Day. Number 4, 42nd Street. Number 3, She Done Him Wrong. Number 2, Little Women. And number 1, I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. So yeah, that's it. This is our new ranking. There's only one movie to add, the winner.
And I'm wondering, is it gonna be our winner too?
Yeah, we'll see next time when we review the next movie. If you want to see that, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and come back when that review pops out. If you like this video, hit the like button. Comment in the comment section below. Did you like 1933's Little Women? Let us know. And have a nice day.
Don't point, Joe. He'll think you're waving at him. He's gone anyway. Well, what if he does? Hey! Joe!
Hey!